Hey everybody, Glenn Haussman here, and I am reporting to you live from our office here on Long Island, New York. Now today I'm really excited because today we have Mit Shah. He's the CEO of Noble Investment Group, and he's also the founder of the Bharat Shah Leadership Speaker Series, which we're going to get to and talk about coming to the Hunter Hotel Investment Conference the 18th through 20th of this month. But before we get into that, I do want to say that I'm very thrilled to have somebody of Mit Shah's caliber debasing himself to appear live with me on this broadcast. And the cool thing is, we are going to be able to answer your questions out there, the things that you're thinking about most, and help you become future leaders in the hospitality industry and achieve more. So before we don't have any more ado, let's bring in Mr. Mit Shah himself. Mit, great to see you, man. Welcome to the show. So absolutely delighted to have you here with me.
Thanks, Glenn. It's great being with you, pal.
Yeah, so sorry if I'm looking over here. It's just I've got this other computer set up, and we are, boom, hey, Rupesh Patel is already saying hello. Hey, Rup, we got a bunch of people watching already. I love it, only a minute into it. So, Mit, you are one of the, the consummate hospitality industry entrepreneurs. I've been in this business for more years, and and you've always been a leader in that business. Now that I'm done kissing your butt, let's talk about how you've actually achieved that. Before we get into what you see today, how did you get started? I know that it had something to do with selling Coca-Cola from your dad's hotel at age 10 or something like that, right?
Yeah, look, I think, Glenn, everybody has people in their lives that, at some point in time believed in them, gave them a chance and an opportunity to do things that, maybe they weren't predisposed in which to do. And my story is like so many of people in this industry that this is a great family business. It's a business where you can enter into at any level and go on to do great things. And my journey, again, is not very unique. My parents had the great fortune in which to immigrate to the United States, and my dad's a food scientist, got his PhD,
wow.
Became an accidental hotelier. I was 10 years old in 1979, and they became the proud owners of the Winkler Motor Inn. And so at age 10, I was learning how to run the front desk, clean rooms, do laundry, none of which was voluntary by any means, but it gave me an incredible understanding of this business across a lot of different paradigms.
Right.
That prepared me when I went to school, into college, to actually get a job working for Marriott at a conference center that they ran on campus. And that further gave me the skill set that when I graduated, an investment banking firm that was looking for somebody that had 5 years of operating experience, because there's a new product type in 1991 called select service hotels, right, that they wanted somebody to match finance along with a hotel operating skill set. I just happened to qualify at that age of the ripe old age of 21 years old. And that was, again, a part of this journey that I talk about, which is, I started off at school, taking biochem and physics, thinking that I was going to be a doctor, and none of that resonated with me very well. And I found a different path and a different way. And in each part along that way, people gave me a chance. So now you fast forward 3 years into this investment banking gig. I'm now running a group, and I'm meeting with all the top brands. I'm learning how to read construction plans, architectural plans. I'm running our CMBS desk, which had just started, in terms of a debt platform. And I was going kind of full cycle in these properties. We're providing capital for people to go build Hampton Inns and Marriott Courtyards. And I was seeing these, get developed. It was an interesting time. So at that time, U.S. RevPAR was $40.
Wow.
You could build these hotels for $40,000 a room. So if you found a market that had $40 RevPAR, you could build them for $40,000 a room. You'd make enough money in that first year to refinance 100% of your equity out, and continue to have a double-digit return on equity going forward. And I thought, this is just crazy.
Yeah.
How does it work? And lo and behold, my parents kind of showed me the way. They said, hey, this is kind of how the business operates. And that gave me the ability to actually forge out on my own and say, this is what I think a business could really look like. The name Noble really came from kind of the word that we used around the house, which is, you'll always have an opportunity to make decisions in your life. It's either going to be the easiest decision, the hardest decision, the most lucrative decision, but always make sure it's the right decision, the noble decision. And that kind of grounded me in thinking about the business that I wanted to build. A great opportunity that I had, and this is what I tell younger people all the time. I said, just always soak up these experiences. And a big part of the experiences that I had was I knew the difference between an organization that had, a real, policies, procedures, systems, people, and basically, what we used to call two guys and a cell phone, which again, think about in 91, not a whole lot of people had cell phones right there, but, that you could start a business. And I always wanted to align myself with people that had, great kind of organizations and great people and great talent. So that's how it all started.
Wow, that's a whole lot to digest. So let me break that down a little bit. So you're 21, you get this great opportunity to really push yourself. How did you know at that age that you should take advantage of these things and you should push yourself beyond your barriers? Because I think of me when I was 21, I was worried about going to see like a Grateful Dead show. I wasn't worried about creating an empire, you know?
Yeah, look, I say this all the time. I think I'm very fortunate to have stood on the shoulders of giants that, with my parents that, basically sacrificed everything coming over here. So like, working hard was always kind of in our blood. My dad was a food scientist in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. His salary was $15,000 a year. So, I had to, all of our, family saving and scholarship to go away to college and the like. So, I mean, some of this stuff was just kind of ingrained in how we thought about just waking up every day. But I will say the other part of this is where I started. There were people all along the way that believed in me. So I go back to the age of 21 when I'm starting, in this business. And I got this job that I shouldn't have because they were looking for somebody that was 5 years older than me, that had 5 years experience in hotel operations. So I already kind of had an unfair advantage that way because I'd already had soaked up all these experiences growing up that I was 5 years ahead. Then when I got there, within 6 months, the guy that was leading the group left to go form his own shop. And so it essentially became the Wild Wild West. And I had the opportunity at that point in time to either continue to, kind of work the normal amount of hours and kind of grind it through as a young analyst, et cetera, or I could take on all these meetings that I really had no business in being in. And that gave me yet another advantage because now I'm learning things, I'm doing things that no kid my age really should have been doing. And so now you fast forward a couple of years into it, I've soaked up all these other incredible experiences. I've learned a lot. I've seen, this cycle kind of prevail. This is when the biggest thing happened. That's when I went to actually my parents and said, they now started with the Winkler Motor Inn. They had, 50% of two smaller, limited service hotels. They had lived the American dream. They came here with nothing, made $15,000 a year, and now they actually have a good lifestyle. And here's their eldest son going to them and saying the following: I believe that I can go build 3 Hampton Inns, in the Southeast. To do that, I'm going to need $1 million of equity. I've looked at your financials. I believe that I can pull out $2 million of equity out of everything that you built over an entire lifetime, allow you to keep $1 million in cash if you will invest $1 million with me. This is the dream that that I have. Wow. And so you fast forward and you kind of think about all the conversations that would have happened over the course of the years. All of them were like, what are you thinking? Like, this is just a kid. He's 24 years old. How are you going to sacrifice everything? And my parents' answer was very clear. And he goes, we were given everything by our parents and borrowed money to come to America. If this was our child's dream, we were going to sacrifice the same for him to accomplish his dream. Wow. That's kind of that's like goosebumps stuff, right?
That's pretty deep, man.
You're like, this doesn't really happen. And I will tell you, it's a testament to not only just the American dream and the immigrant's journey, but I think what family is all about. And that's why I believe it's such a beautiful thing about this industry is that you see families all throughout it. And and they're always looking to say, how can we provide the ability for our children not only to have a better life than the one that we had, but if there's some ability for us to create something of inordinate value, that they can actually be ready and groomed in which to go and take it forward. And I know we're going to get to this in a second, but this is why I'm so excited about this year's speaker series, because my good friend Sarah Blakely, who's going to be on, she shares that same exact entrepreneur's journey. And she represents what's a hero to my daughter. And I think we talk a lot of times about, just the boys in the business and the guys, and, this is what we do with our sons. And the conversation is less about our girls, and that's kind of systematic in terms of our industry. But Heather, I mean, when I talk about Sarah and kind of her journey, growing up, her dad would sit down with her every single day and say, "Tell me what you tried today that you weren't as good as what you wanted to be at, and what are you going to do about that tomorrow?" And they talk about their failures, and they talk about their lack of successes, and that's what drove her to have this incredible, journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it really has been. I'd like for all of you folks out there that are watching to put your questions in the comments. Mit is here to talk to you about entrepreneurial endeavors. He's here to talk about the hotel business, which we'll get to in a minute. But I do want to say, we got a couple of people that are out here that are responding to your story, and they're like, energy times execution equals results, says Christine Trippy. And Lori Roy says, hard work, belief in self equals opportunity. Way to go, Mit. That's right, because you do have to have confidence in yourself. So how did you get confidence in yourself in order to radiate that confidence to your parents that they would take such a risk on you? Because they're not just going to give away everything they worked for to their kid on a hope and a prayer. You had to prove that this was a plan that was going to work in order for them to know that everything would be okay, correct?
Exactly. And I try to think back on it, and I say, was there some moment in time or some point? And this wasn't blind. I mean, I literally, a big part of this was my parents approached this in that, look, we're not going into business together. Like, this isn't some partnership that we're going to have. You're coming to us to be an investor, and we're going to look at this as an investment, and we're going to be a lead investor, when at that time. And so you start your own company. You bring in people that will trust you, et cetera. We're just going to be an investor in the individual assets that you do, but you got to treat us as such. And so that's an important point. I didn't really realize what that meant at the time, but what it gave me the ability to do is to actually attract talent and people and bring them in as my partners. Again, when you're young, you've got big hopes and dreams, you're not really sure what challenges you might have to recruit really great talent to come believe in your dreams, and believe in their dreams, and hopefully your dreams and their dreams coalesce so that, it gets accomplished together. So that's just one part. But, in terms of confidence, I would say it's twofold, and none of this is really surprising. You find your way. I go back to what Sarah and her dad's conversation was. What did you try today that you weren't as successful as you would have liked to have been? Let's use a different word, that you failed at. Right. What was it? And then let's celebrate that, because you actually learn from it. And then that helps you figure out what you're capable of doing, how to stretch your limits, and the like. So there's plenty of books being written about all of that, but that's at the heart of what this speaker series is for. It's storytelling, not about all these great successes, but what were the times whereby, you hit the mat, you're on the floor, you have to get up, who helped you up, and then, what did that mean in terms of your psyche going forward? So that's number one. The second part is, I've always been very focused on peer groups. And I talk to our team about this every year. And it's kind of, as we kick off every year, I have two fundamental questions. Talk to me about the peer group that you have right now. The ones that, you meet with and you talked about different things around strategy, home life, ideas and thoughts that you might have. And what are you getting out of them? And then talk to me as well about what's an aspirational peer group look like. And so for me, I've always spent every year thinking about what is my existing peer group and what's an aspirational peer group. So we raised our first institutional fund at the end of 2006. The state of New York is a large institutional LP of ours. And as we were, closing out that fund, the head of the fund, the head of New York State, asked me if I knew John Gray. And I said, we've met, but, we really haven't spent some time together. He says, well, we're big investors in their new real estate fund, Blackstone, which was a different company than it was at that time. And he said, you guys should really spend more time together. How about if I connect you by email? So, those are things, situations whereby people introduce you to people. So now fast forward, John and I, not only get to meet, become friends. We become, he helps me think about the world in a much different way than I have in the past. And those are examples of things where, along the way, you take advantage of all those opportunities to meet people that you don't know at the time whether they're going to be transformational or not. Right. But that, to me, has helped my ability to think more broadly, to act more strategically, and also to lead, hopefully, more effectively as it relates to our organization.
Right. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds to me that a lot of what you're talking about here was part of the reasons why you started the Bharat Shah Leadership Speaker Series. What's going on, 7, 8 years already?
Correct. Right. Yeah.
So what was the genesis of you creating this speaker series, and what are you seeing it achieve right now out there for folks? And I should say it's endowed at Georgia State University Cecil B. Day School of Hospitality and the Robinson College of Business. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's great. And it was actually my dad's idea. And it came through conversations that we were having over time, where, his journey as an immigrant and in search of the American dream is something that is so deeply personal to him. It's what it's what he gives credit to, everything that has been accomplished. And he continues to say, even though this country has always had challenges and will continue to have challenges, it's still the greatest country in the world. And what he was really desirous of is how to make sure that these stories and these messages of leaders, of iconic people, get told to those that may not have actually been able to really understand and appreciate kind of all the opportunities that exist here. And this is stories of struggle and perseverance. Right. And as I mentioned to you, hitting the mat. And so the whole idea was to just sit down, much like we're doing right now. We could essentially be in the same living room, just having a conversation, but talk to an audience that's filled with our future leaders and our students at Georgia State. By the way, fun fact, this is a university that graduates the highest amount of as a percentage of students, minorities in America. They have one of the largest concentration where their students are the first ones in their family to ever go to college. Wow. And it typifies all the beautiful things about what education and America is all about. And the Hunter Conference, as we talked about, is just full of these incredible entrepreneurs. So over time, we've had Arnie Sorensen and Chris Nassetta and Mark Hoplamazian and Tom Baltimore, and in each one of these stories are very, very unique. Tom Baltimore, grew up in the segregated South. He was born the same week as Dr. King's March on Washington, and his family never had a permanent roof over their heads. Father was a minister, and he grew up in his own words in poverty, and we talked about this, and Dr. King's amazing speech at that time, had so many memorable quotes, but one of them is that he talked about that his congregation's bodies weak from travel, not being able to gain access to the hotels of our cities and the motels of our highways. And I said, can you ever imagine that Dr. King would have been sitting there at that time, thought about a child born that very week to his congregation would be the founder and chairman of the second largest hotel ownership company in the world, with luxury hotels throughout our cities. And so this is just powerful stories. Mark Hoplamazian's family escaped the Armenian genocide. And he came here, and only through the benefit of having scholarships and the like could he actually go to school and account to that. Chris Nassetta grew up with a plunger in his hand, plunging toilets at the Holiday Inn that his father owned, and so all this dramatic. I mean, he talked about the week whereby he's now the CEO of Hilton, and it's the Great Recession and the lawsuit, with Starwood, and just the deep emotion of where he couldn't control it. And now, it's one of the most successful lodging brands that have ever existed. So all of these things, and even before, my dear friend Arnie was diagnosed with this terrible, pancreatic cancer that he's been fighting. We spent about half of our conversation talking about the deep meaning of family and faith. And his father, was a man of great faith. And that's why they moved over from Scandinavia. And actually, Barney was born in Japan, because after World War II, his father moved to Japan with his mother at a young age, because they wanted to spread the message of God in that way. And so Arnie grew up around all of these Japanese families, and that's where he learned how to respect different people's, perspectives and the like. And these are all these conversations that go different ways, and nobody's talking about, the 5,000 hotel room pipelines, and then we're talking about, the EBITDA, growth of this year. They're just talking about human stories as a person, as a spouse, as a father, as a wife. All of these things that I think are really impactful to the audience.
And that's why I love what we're talking about right now, because I don't think, Mitt, that we spend enough time telling the stories of the people that have achieved. I think in our society, we have an assumption that if somebody is a CEO, they magically appeared there. We don't picture them with the plunger in the toilet as a teenager, right? And everybody's got a great story behind them. And we all are special in our own unique way and are able to overcome challenges. Now, Rupesh Patel, he wants to know, what was your biggest mistake growing up when it comes to this sort of stuff? And what was the lesson that you took away from it? And I guess to add to that is, how has that informed you on how to be a better individual or a smarter business person going forward?
Yeah, look, there's so many mistakes in which to count. I have been asked, what if I had things to do over again? What would I've done differently? And and I'll just start kind of on a professional basis. We started building 3 Hampton Inns, and I knew it, I understood it, etc. I thought success at that time was, hey, just to get bigger, like success meant how many hotels do you have, and larger hotels, and perhaps more luxury hotels, etc. And we built this skill set for over from 93 to 99, called the first 6 years of business that as I started Noble, we were built focused on just a select service business. And then, I think this fallacy of bigger is better, and larger hotels are simply more profitable hotels or better. It was really a fallacy, in that ride, and sticking to your knitting, being great at something as opposed to good at a handful of things was something that I learned along the way. And now I kind of fast forward 27 years in the business, and I think I needed to actually go through that. Like you don't know until you know that, hey, this is kind of what the strategy should be. And so that was basically a big life lesson. And when you wake up and you've got the dot-com bust of 2000, 2001, and the incredible tragedy of 9/11, and you find yourself kind of on the other side, knowing how hard you have to grind in which to kind of get through all of that, it starts to put a lot of focus on, let's figure out how to be great at something, as opposed to kind of dabbling in a bunch of different things just from the sake of growth.
Right. So that then took you down the path of really focusing on a select service type of property, something that you're still doing today. I think I feel like you just recently did deals to get a new courtyard and a couple of things like that. I may be wrong. That might have been a year ago. I don't know.
Look, I'll give you
my facts in order.
Yeah, no. Look, I'll give you a sense of just what we do. So, almost 90% of everything we've done has been in the upscale select service space. And so you've got the brands, so traditional brands like Courtyard and Residence Inn and Hilton Garden Inn and High Place, and then there's the lifestyle select service brands, which I had a conversation about earlier, like AC and Moxie. And that's been 100% of our strategy since 2008. And so we got two verticals. So over 90% since 1993 for 27 years, and 100% since 2008. Wow. We've got two strategies that we focus on. One is we've got a development strategy where we're under construction at any point in time around $300 million of assets.
Wow.
We've got a national strategy with like Simon, with parking REITs. We're taking urban land that exists. We're repurposing it and building hotels vertically on that. And so at any given time, there's roughly $300 million of assets there.
Wow.
And then
that's a lot of properties, because we're talking about select.
Yeah, they're larger, but so Glenn, I mean, just keep in mind these are all probably 70 to $100 million assets, dual brands, et cetera. And these are urban locations like Seattle, South Lake Union, or Midtown, Atlanta, and really highly urban sites. So they're call it like 250 to 300 total rooms between two brands, and kind of large scale type of development. So that's kind of that's one part of the business. The other part of the business is that we've got a core plus income business where we're buying between $500 to $700 million of existing assets a year in that business. There are 53,000 hotels in the United States. Of those, 3,000 of them, 9,000 are select service hotels in general, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, and Intercon. Of those, 3,000 of them reside in markets that have $100 RevPAR and higher. Okay, so 3,000 out of the 53,000. So our thesis is that, and these are owned by hundreds and hundreds of local developers and owner operators, many of which come to the Hunter Conference and kind of that's the makeup. So our thesis is we're buying we're buying hotels, again, $500 to $700 million of those hotels, average asset size between $40 and $60 million, and so we're doing 10 to 15 of those a year on the buy side, and we're doing 4 or 5 of these larger developments on the development side on an annual basis.
Being that you're working in so many of the larger markets and stuff, I think this question from Frederick Schoner is probably a good one for you. Do you have any experience or tips on what to look for or look out for with properties that are on leased land? Are you involved in any of those types of projects?
Yeah. Lease. So that's the lease land question has been part of our business for a long time, and people view it a lot of different ways. So we've done deals where we've got lease land on university campuses, where essentially the university needs to own the real estate, but we have a 99-year ground lease, and it's favorable to the overall economics. Or we've done it in conjunction with a city conference center or the like, where again we've done those kinds of deals where you can actually essentially just structure it so that it provides security because of its length of time that you would really need. Shorter term ground leases are obviously more problematic. There is an interesting dynamic to where if one group thinks that they can actually extend it, because it compromises the value. Essentially, if you've only got X amount of years, you'll only have the ability in which to generate cash flow for that period of time. So typically, we do not like it in our hotels. We don't seek it out. But if it's got length of time associated with it, it's something that we can structure around.
Right, because if it's too short, then the financial dynamics are going to say, oh, we can't reinvest in XYZ because we're never going to get an ROI on it, right? That makes a whole lot of sense to me. All right, another question from Bob and Patel. What are some books or literature you're reading consistently or has helped to shape you during your journey?
So I love reading biographies, and a big part of that is the storytelling that we were talking about as it relates to just people's stories. I feel like, and this goes back to peer groups and aspirational peer groups, and just having understanding of how people went through certain ideas and challenges and the like. Is always very, very helpful for me. So I spend a lot, when I read, I like reading, personal stories. I'm a big nonfiction, kind of person. And so that's very helpful for me. Just kind of come, you can either create your own experiences and therefore develop your own ideas, or you can do that and get the benefit of other people's, journeys and their ideas and thoughts and incorporate that into your own.
Right, I agree. And I think that the more stories we hear, the more experiences that we're privy to, I think the more it helps inform us about what we can do and what's possible and opens that up. I happen to I'm on the go a lot, so I don't necessarily read as much as I would like to, but I love, for example, the podcast series Business Wars, right? And it tells you all about how these companies were created and the personalities behind them and what drove them to success. And I could tell myself, oh, I have those qualities, or, oh, I could work towards being better at X, Y, Z. And I think it winds up informing you of a lot of the, you didn't know what you didn't know until you educated yourself, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly right. It's a good thing to know. You don't know what you don't know, right? And that's why all of these things kind of tie together.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So a couple of the brands that you've been focused on is you love this new breed of lifestyle hotels, and I'm finding that the word lifestyle hotel doesn't necessarily mean what it used to. I really think most hotels are appeal to some specific sort of lifestyle that's out there. But early on, you mentioned AC and Moxie when they first came here from Europe. You embraced those. What were you thinking at the time, and how does that approach to that select service model better represent 2020 than 1991?
Yeah, I think all brands have kind of a purpose statement around what they want to embody and the like. And I think for us, when we looked at AC and Moxie, it gave us an ability to actually enter into markets with some more creativity around the design aspect.
Right.
I've always thought that one of the great things about our industry is that we can be the living room of community, and for every in terms of how that represents the place that we're at, and I'm not sure that I understand all these brands and kind of what makes them all terribly unique.
But sometimes I'm not sure the CEOs understand.
It's so hard, right? But the reality is, if you have brands that have an international scale to them. And you have markets that have, preponderance of kind of international demand. And so now you've got built kind of a baseline of understanding around that. And you get powered by one of the big, brand engines.
Right.
You have some more flexibility from a design and from an execution standpoint than you might have in a traditional select service brand. So the way we look at it is that the entire lodging industry should all be lifestyle. I mean, it should all characterize how we live and how we play and stay and the like. You just sort of have a couple of these brands that existed in places around the world that had already kind of built some traction from a customer standpoint.
Right. And I think for somebody like you, now that you've been in the business for decades, the emergence of these types of properties probably coincides with you feeling more confident about being able to program hotels with the design elements and all of the other parts of it that create that well-rounded experience. So no longer do you have to rely on that cookie cutter approach that the brand served up for you. You can bring your experience and your own point of view to some of these newer brands, such as AC and Moxie.
Yeah, and look, I think this industry is going to continue to be dynamic with change. And you've not only got all the branded universe and all of these brands that we're trying to delineate what means what. You've also got an entire alternative lodging universe that are creating unique experiences that we should all be paying attention to. It's how customers book and how they travel and how they think about travel and experiences and the like. I said this, while we're all at Alice, that I think that this is the great loyalty war of our of our generation, which is who's ultimately going to own loyalty and what's happening with that over time is going to be very important for all of us to watch, because as owners and as franchisees, even though we've had our challenges, with brands and the like relative to, different periods of time, it's been a great partnership that has built a lot of success going back to the American dream. I mean, it has been, a real important part of our strategy. But we're now at a place whereby what's happening in these individual markets with, a lot of new product that is being put into place. At the same time, the alternative lodging universe continue to expand. It is going to be, I believe, a dynamic time over the next couple of years as that product gets absorbed, as alternative lodging continues to increase in terms of the different kinds of products out there. It's not just Airbnb, it's Domio, and Sonder, and Lyric, and the like, and making sure that there is a path towards continuing to win. And going forward, and a big part of that is just paying attention. to different business models and operating models and brand standards and how all that works. And I've also said, I think we need to do a much better job of taking costs out of the system, of utilizing artificial intelligence and technology and the like. We're so far behind as an industry in general of having done that. But that's a big part of what we need to be focused on in the future.
Right. It surely is. And we've got a couple more questions lined up, but I don't want to leave that hanging, what you just said, in terms of taking the expenses out of the business. And one of the observations I made is after the Great Recession, I thought, oh my God, everyone's done such a great job, taking out a lot of the fat from the organization. Now, 10 years later, how are we going to do that again? But then I realized, boy, technology changes absolutely everything. And it opens up new possibilities and new opportunities for you folks out there to reduce or eliminate costs while simultaneously getting closer to your customers. So how do you see that really working out to enhance customer experience while lowering that expense part? And then guys listening out there, we'll get to your questions.
Yeah. So look, I think ultimately the big brands have got to drive a lot of this relative to their brand standards. And there's a disconnect. How do you go from saying that housekeeping is going to be optional, yet enhance the customer experience, as a part of all of that, right? I mean, those are two things that are just divergent in terms of how, a brand would think. Well, maybe one brand wants to go first and then, but they're not sure if anybody will follow. And that's going to be, denigrating to, their overall experience. I said this to our friends at Marriott when they acquired Starwood. I said, I believe you have an opportunity to change the paradigm here by saying when guests book a room, why can't they do it, even though we're completely different in many ways in the airline industry, but now with your scale, why can't we do this so that way a customer pays at time of booking? And if they want to change, they got to be status in terms of your loyalty program. And there's, some sort of, and a lot of these things in terms of, being very helpful to the future profitability of our business, it's just taking way too much, way too much time in which to get there. And so my perspective on all this is it's going to take real partnership from the brand level, owner community, in which to really continue to push all this forward.
Are you saying the hotel industry is a little slow to pivot, Mit?
We've had this conversation over generations.
Speaking about generations, Achar Patel, you know him over at Ho as the VP of Conventions. He wants to know, for the second generation hoteliers wanting to diversify either their hotel portfolio or other assets, what 3 top things do you ask yourself before embarking on that buying, developing, analyzing something new?
Well, look, I think the first thing is that how do you either acquire or develop a skill set that can allow you to be successful at a certain thing. And again, as I go back to my story, so much of that was just was just good divine fortune and intervention of being able to be in the right place at the right time and continue to add skill set. So by adding skill set, I was able to be prepared to go do those things. When we thought about over time, and we've had conversations over time about, do we get into another asset class in addition to lodging? Do we invest in lodging technology companies to take advantage of our scale? Do we do other things, provide growth capital, et cetera? And every one of those times I would go back and say, what's our best utilization of time?
Right.
Is it to go and hey, there's another opportunity for us to go invest capital that I believe that we can go and create value from, or can we simply scale what we're already doing? And I thought about this on the debt side as well. Do we go create a debt platform to go and the amount of time it takes to go and provide a loan into this space is the same amount of time as to invest equity into this space. And so we're better off utilizing that time to go invest in equity, relative to the space. So to me, that's always kind of the dilemma. How can you either develop your own skill set, acquire that skill set through, talent coming on board, and then can you be great at that versus just good? And it's not because somebody else is doing that, but like, how can you, invest every single, week, month, year in terms of getting better at doing something than, you were going in.
Right. So it's really about understanding what your resources are and then deploying those resources, either being staff or money, in the things that you understand are within your area of your skill set, et cetera, et cetera. All right, another.
I'll give you one other example on that. We built a management organization that I was super proud of. Built it organically, 1993, and in 2011, I was faced with a dilemma. We were running 100 hotels, of which we owned 2/3 of which, and then a third of them were third-party managed hotels we used to own, and then we sold, and we still ran them. We had 4,000 employees. I had 8 direct reports, and I didn't think that at that time, because of our growth path, that we could be the best operator or the best investor that we really, could have been. I mean, it was a challenge. I was challenged by that. And so there, an opportunity came about to sell our management business, which we ultimately did, to Interstate Hotels. On October 31st, 2011, I went from 4,000 employees and 8 direct reports to November 1st. I had a staff meeting. There's 28 people in the room, and I had 2 direct reports. And our investment business took off. Our success as an operator, even though we didn't run anything, got better because we were able to focus on people and profitability and processes. And I wasn't in accounting meetings and technology meetings and and HR meetings, around running a business that ran hotels. We were just investing and making sure that those businesses run appropriately. And I mentioned that because that's always the dynamic. And when you're young, it's the next generation. You want to try to figure out, you got the balls in the air. You want to try to figure out which one is going to hit. And so, you can't just say, I'm just going to do this one thing, because what happens if it doesn't hit? And so that becomes a dilemma. And by the way, you end up with a young family at the time and a lot of other things that are going on. So it is challenging. That's where the peer group became the most important thing for me, because I got to talk to people above me that have been through this 5, 7, 10 years, and they helped show me things that I wouldn't have gotten if I just did it myself.
Right. That's fascinating. So how did you actually know that this was the right decision for you to sell off something that you put so much time and energy into it and you had great success from?
Yeah, it really came down to me believing whether or not we could actually be as successful as we possibly could by doing both of these together at the same time, or if we really had the ability to transform our business by focusing on one. I knew from a time standpoint, a quality of life, and all of that, it was going to be better. But the real bet was, are we going to be a better investor and essentially a better operator? Using this local management companies at the local level and not having this big organization, that I had to run on a day-to-day basis. And, so a lot of that I talked about. Actually, one of the first people I went to talk to was Arnie. I went to DC, we sat down. He goes, management business is really tough. He goes, there's many days I wake up wondering, could we do the exact same thing? He goes, I think you should do this deal. And again, I have the ability to go, have the benefit of these incredible, wise counsel across doing that. And that's kind of how we made the decision.
Beautiful. I love it. All right. So Bhavan Patel has a question for you. What's your take on all the new brands that are being introduced out there? How or if is there going to be cannibalizing is going to determine what developers and owners and operators are doing? Because, there's been a new brand on average announced every month for something like 100 months now. It's been absolutely incredible. Just at Alice a couple of weeks ago, at the event or around the event, there were another 3 or 4 brands. So how do you focus on all of this, know what's right for you, and cut through all of that clutter as well?
Yeah. Here's the obvious answer. There are way too many brands in our business.
I know, but what are you going to do? Because the franchise companies need to keep doing what they're doing, right?
Well, look, I mean, they're going back to this loyalty war that we talked about. They believe that the system effect of having more brands allows them more customers, right? So it's Coca-Cola with all the Coca-Cola product. It's Mercedes-Benz with all the different kinds of Mercedes product that you can have. So there are examples of this where you've got multiple brands. What's happening is that because of that escalation of brands has happened so fast, so quickly, and so many of them, and everybody wants to do the next version of this modified extended stay like Home Do, and everybody wants to do lifestyle that's competitor to this. And it was like the old days where when Hilton Garden Inn got launched, they essentially pulled out the Courtyard directory because there's no technology at the time, right? So you open the directory and that's where your target market list was a joke, at the time. Now it's a real dilemma. So here's what our position really is we're going to continue to try to think about what do we believe the brands that are going to win over the next 5 to 10 years. In our business, we tend to hold our hotels for 10-year cycles and 10-year duration. It gives us the ability. If you track RevPAR in the upscale lodging sector over the last 30 years, every single 10-year period has been above 2% RevPAR, except for one, and that was from 2000 to 2009, dot-com bust to the height of the Great Recession, and that was still positive, by the way. And so, if you think about that in terms of just a 10-year time frame, picking the right brands and the right company makes a lot of sense. Here's the problem: you have a lot of next generation folks that don't have the relationships with the top brands or don't have the ability to go do their brand of choice. Right. But they've got capital, they've got sites, and they've got, tremendous enthusiasm. So it's the next best brand versus the brand I'd like to do, or the third best brand that I'd like to do.
I feel
that's
like
why you see, and I'll tell you one other decision that I made, and I won't name any names. We've done one investment with a brand that is not named Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, and IHG, in our time cycle. And it was the one investment that when it hit a crisis, there wasn't a system or a pipe that was strong enough in which to deliver from that. And what we really realized was there is a difference between the haves and the have-nots, and that doesn't mean that just because you have today you won't have it. It won't go away, or because you don't have it right now. But spending that time is really, really important.
Right, but it also means that in the particular track that you've taken your company on, that might be true to you. But for other owners, operators, and investors out there, they may have a different approach, and those other brands might work well for them also. So I do want to make sure that there is no one size fits all scenario when it comes to all of this. But
let me give you a comment of a conversation I had with a senior leader at one of the big brands recently. And it was like, Mitt, I understand that there's real concern on the owner side regarding the amount of new product that we're approving. And by the way, they're celebrating it, right? It's like, here's how many thousands of rooms, et cetera. Because, the public shareholder looks at the brands as C Corps, and they say, I'm betting on you because of growth. Like, we want you to continue to grow. And so to grow, you have to add pin dots, and that means more brands, and that means more locations and things like that. He goes, I get it, but I'm also at the same time getting this record number of franchisees, that are buying our brands and building these hotels. And I said, fundamentally, you have two issues that are happening here. Number one, you give a developer money and a brand, they will build a hotel. Right. It's pure and simple. It doesn't matter. If they have the money and they have a brand, they will go build a hotel. Right. The second part of this is that you have a lot of developers, franchisees right now that they're ready to kind of grow, scale their businesses. And, they'll buy the, sixth best brand in a branding family, the eighth best brand out of a branded family, because they want the ability in which to kind of get inside the family. But what happens when that brand doesn't deliver the kind of market share? If you're building a hotel, and I'm just going to use raw numbers here for a second. If you're building a hotel and you're banking on 100% RevPAR index, right, and you're banking on a market to grow at 2% RevPAR, and you're banking on NOI not to go negative, but to flat to a little bit positive. And let's say you're financing this at 75% with recourse financing. All right. What happens in 18 months when you open that hotel? If you open that hotel already over the next 18 months, and that loan now has to achieve a 10% debt yield, and you've had all of those things go away from you. You're not achieving the RevPAR index because there's too many brands out of that same family. That's number one. Alternative lodging eating up. You have negative NOI growth, and you've got a loan that doesn't meet a minimum covenant test, and that creates real stress and distress in a market when you've got a lot of franchisees out there that have never actually been through that. That's the concern here, and that's the unknown. And I don't want to suggest there's this terrible situation that's going to happen, but that's the reality of how all of this works, and we've seen it over multiple cycles.
Right. And I agree with you. I do not think a terrible situation will happen. I do think that in this particular cycle, we're also seeing a fundamental societal shift that people value travel and experiences more than materialistic items. So the overall pool of travelers, I think, has exploded. That is nicely matching the growth of the hotel business. But Mitt, I think what you're getting to is the overall dichotomy in our business. There are two separate sides that we like to conflate: the development side and the operation side. You need to develop, but the operators don't necessarily want new hotels to open, because then that's going to cause them increased competition, right? So that's a tough thing, I think, for people to square in their minds.
Yeah, I would say it's, look, this is the old, this has been going on, this conversation has been going on for years and years and years. Like I want to develop, I just don't want others to develop in my own market. I mean, that's basically the easiest way to talk about it. The problem right now is there's been so many new brands that have existed. What we've heard from our friends and colleagues in the business is, there's hotels being built in markets that just don't justify it, right? That's number one. Number two is, which is bad for business in general. And number two is that, if you're building a X brand in a given market, you're just started construction and 2 or 3 more within the same brand family have already been approved, right? Before you have actually a chance to get open up. So there's those kinds of dynamics. We don't have the answer for that. I will just say, if you fast forward and you look at what the challenges could be, is that the pipes don't get big enough so that everybody, it won't be like Halloween where everybody gets candy. It'll be kind of the other side of it, where it's like only the very best will kind of get the market share, and others falter.
Others are going to be Charlie Brown and get a rock. Right. All right. So one interesting question. Connie Bauer is curious about, how are aging millennials changing the face of the traditional room? Do they want different furniture, smaller or larger? And I think that's a great question, because I remember when one particular brand was introduced, and they were very, very focused on millennials, but they didn't seem to understand that those millennials were going to get married and have kids, and then might wind up losing out on that opportunity because the rooms were so much smaller, et cetera, et cetera. How do you see all of that kind of stuff playing out?
Yeah, look, I don't believe there's a material difference between aging millennials or every other generation that's been there. I mean, it's interesting. Every generation wants to talk about the generation after them. It's like, oh, they're different. They're not this and that.
Well, to be fair, the generation after us, they suck.
The aging millennials are going to be like us. You know why we want larger accommodations? Because we got kids traveling with us.
Exactly.
In a place that's safe and secure, and we don't want to go meet a guy in a bar to go get the room key, et cetera. We want all of that because we care more about our family safety and security than anything else. VRBO was around for a long time, and the like. So all of this. All has the ability in which to be in the same place. I will say the one thing that is the most important, I believe, for aging millennials, and then also our aging boomer population and the like, is convenient, cleanliness and convenience, and the ability to kind of, utilize in-home technology when you're on the road. And I believe that is one thing that I would say the brands are doing a very good job of adopting into design standards and the like. We're doing a bunch of new element development where we'll have existing rooms in communal areas and the like, and technology is a big part of all of that. I think Hilton's probably done the best out of I think the brands in terms of addressing technology and the convenience of that into the mix. But design, it's ever changing in our boxes. We just see that here's a new design package for this new design and case goods, and do you put it in a desk and not put it in a desk? In Moxie, there was no desk in the brand standard, and our first Moxie was in New Orleans in the French Quarter, that we did. And, you would think if any place would be perfect, and, who needs a desk in New Orleans in the French Quarter? Well, that was the number one guest, feedback that, hey, we really, we really need that. So I think it's about being thoughtful about design and spaces and the like. I will tell you, we're doing our first independent hotel at Yale University, where we're looking at a lot of different design and operating standards that we think components that are our own that we believe, could be extremely valuable as we think about the boxes of the future and the different operating models of the future.
Would you like to share all of those secrets with us now and ruin your new development?
Well, no. So like, here's the thing. Like I know what we believe that they're going
Right.
to be and what they're going to do. But the proof of concept is really interesting for all of us.
Right.
I laugh about this internally. That like, if we get it right, then maybe we're really onto something. If we get it wrong, I'm pretty sure there's a collection brand amongst our partners that we can integrate.
Right. Yeah, absolutely sure. All right. So we're getting close to an hour now, so we got to bring this thing home a little bit. But what are you most excited about, Mitt, when it comes to the future, even with your personally, with your company, with your life, or just the hotel industry in general and where we all seem to be headed? Maybe all three.
Yeah. So let me I'll kind of go back. I'll go from beginning to the last part of it. So I think what I'm really excited about right now, my wife and I were empty nesters. We've got our daughter that's a freshman in college, our son that's a senior in college. They're both in school together, which, seeing them,
Awesome.
it's the reason why our daughter chose, I think that school at the end of the day, they're super close. I think it's nice to see. We've got friends whose kids are now getting married. This part of life, while it's dynamic, because we also have on the other side parents that are aging, et cetera. It's a part of life that is very different and unique,
Right.
and I'm excited for that. Our son, who's now a senior, he fell in love with real estate after his freshman year in college. He got an internship at Starwood Capital, and
Awesome.
he worked at Blackstone last summer, and now he's going to work there full time. So he's
Wow.
actually going to have his own real estate journey going forward, which I'm excited for that. Our daughter, if she really figures this out over the next year or two, I will work for her one day. She's the best in the whole family. Like she could change the world. So that's exciting. As it relates to the team and Noble, I believe that we are in the sweet spot of our company's entire duration. I just turned 50. We've got a 27-year realized track record. I've got a runway in front of me to lead this organization. My entire team, my senior team, we've been together an average of 20 years. All of my institutional LPs, we've been together from the very beginning. So my job, I feel, is to continue to provide,
Right.
Leadership and guidance there. And this industry, while it's got its challenges, I'll go translate it back to the American dream, which my father talked about, which is why we did that. Yes, we've got our challenges. Yes, this feels like in many ways that, hey, can we overcome it? Just like in our country.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I believe it's still the best industry in the world. And I believe that it creates tremendous opportunity for us to do things that really brings people into, the living room of their community. And for growth strategy for us, we set out that, we're going to continue. 2 years ago, we said over the next 10 years, we're going to invest in the same kind of clip, between, $600 to $900 million of assets every couple of years through development and acquisitions. And I believe that will continue to hold true for us. But the thing that I'm looking forward to is actually being able to do that alongside an industry that I believe will also change very dramatically, and see this next generation and the ideas and the thoughts and the creativity that they're going to bring to bear, and be able to participate that way as well.
Right. I love seeing what millennials are doing right now and how they're finally achieving the reins of power and affecting change. But I'm also curious as to my kids and your kids are part of that Generation Z, and they are true digital natives, and the stuff that we can learn from them and the way that things are going to change because of them is something I'm very excited to see, as AARP is knocking at my door because I'm turning 50 this year as well. Mitt, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, Glenn, thank you for this opportunity. I love what you're doing from a storytelling standpoint. We talked about this. Having the ability for stories to get told. They're all very unique and deeply personal. And I like to say this. We all have a name on the back of our jersey that we're very, very proud about, but we're also emboldened by the possibilities of the future. And I think sharing these kinds of stories I know it's been valuable when I've sat, next to folks. But I'll also say on a personal level, it's always very rewarding to actually be able to have this conversation. On my standpoint, it's very reflective, and hopefully for your audience, it was that as well.
I think so too. We got a lot of great feedback so far online, and I want to encourage everybody to join us at the Hunter Hotel Investment Conference, March 18th, 19th, and 20th at the Marriott Marquis in downtown Atlanta. And join because you got to see Spanx founder and CEO Sarah Blakely headlining the 2020 Bharat Shah Leadership Speaker Series. Get all into those issues that he talked about and hear her story. So Mit, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to all of you folks out there for being here today. What a great thing this has been. And I will see you guys real soon with another episode here of No Vacancy Live. See you next time.